Hello, everyone, and welcome to a chat with Standard Combo, the dev of Stone Story RPG, a game that I love. I've actually played quite a bit. Probably the first person I've interviewed that I've actually already played their game for 100 hours or so. But yeah, I guess to start off, I'll just give you the opportunity to give a quick intro about who you are as a game dev and all that. I know you have a long history in game dev before Stone Story RPG as well, so just quick intro.
Yeah, sure. It's nice meeting you, Evan. I'm looking forward to our chat because for people, joining, we've never talked before, so I want to hear from you as well.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So
Thank you so
I
much
might
for
have a couple of
coming.
questions,
Of
but
course.
yeah. Well, about me, I've been a game developer my whole life, and even recently, I dug up an old game design that I had made when I was 7 years old. So I've been on this trajectory for a long time, and started as an engineer. So I figured the easiest way to break into the games industry professionally would be to do university for computer science, and that kind of predictably worked the way I imagined. And but since then, once I actually got in and started messing around, I've branched out into other skills, the game design part. And with Stone Story is the first time where, well, actually, my artwork has shipped because for a lot of games, like for example, this MOBA that I worked on um, a few years ago, my I did placeholder art for a lot of the character abilities, and some of that never got replaced by the artists. So my placeholder art actually made it live a few times, but then with Stone Story is the first time where I actually did the entire art direction and everything. And purposely, I designed that project with the intention of being a game that I could take to alpha by myself, that I could do, all the engineering and all the art, that would take it to a certain place, and then I can add more people to help me after that. Because one of the things that's really difficult when you're an independent developer is to get people to commit to the project and commit to sticking with you. And I know a lot of people um, that even might be listening in here struggle with that. Getting people that you can trust that are on the same pace as you. Because if you're working uh, 20 hours a week on the game and you have someone who's putting in a couple hours a week, it's not fair. Like if they get 50% of the rev share and you get the other 50, right? Kind of sucks to be in that situation. So finding a partner that is on the same vibe as you is really hard. And so people who have that should be very thankful that they have a
Yeah.
partner they can count on. I don't. Um, but after taking Stone Story to alpha, then I've been able to find people who now they see the project is really serious, and it's much easier for people to commit.
Yeah. I get what you mean there for sure. And in terms of the way that I've run my MMO, it's been a lot of I've had a couple people that I work pretty closely with, but the vast majority of the art has been like community sourced or like little one-off things, like just trying to get assets from people here and there, and then maybe get them revised by someone else. Because it is really hard to find someone that's going to be able to put in a single dedicated person who's going to be able to put in a lot of time to like a hobbyist sort of or maybe a project that's not hobbyist but isn't making a ton of money to be able to like pay a salary or something. I get that for sure. Well, that's really cool,
Yeah, I'm
man.
not
I
sure where you want to drive the conversation, but I could mention one more thing about the
Oh yeah,
production
for
reality
sure.
there. Art is a lot easier to outsource and compare it to engineering and other skills. Not to minimize it, but it's just that art is easier to partition into pieces, and I think you were touching upon that with community driven part, and
Hmm.
it's just easier to kind of hire someone if you have a small budget. You can spend a few thousand. You can bring an artist on board to do kind of the placeholder art for your first couple of levels, right, in your alpha, and kind of get the ball rolling that way.
Yeah, well, you at least finding engineers should at least be a little bit easier for you than the average indie game, since your game sort of provides a pipeline for becoming a Stone Story engineer anyway, as it's a
That's true.
Got the whole custom scripting thing. I mean, I've kind of
We've had
got
a few
that.
people.
I stream my coding on Twitch a lot, so I've kind of a little bit of a cheat code in that way too. It's like all the people that have helped me with my code are mostly people that watch me code on the stream anyway. But yeah, it's tough. You got to find someone who's into your tech stack and wants to work in your stuff for sure. I mean, yeah, we can chat about whatever. I figured probably like a good starting point would just be to go a little bit chronologically and I guess work our way back up to Stone Story. I mean, I think it would be cool to mostly focus on Stone Story, but I guess just work our way back
Yeah,
up
I
to it
can
and
give a little bit
then
more
drill in now.
backstory. Yeah, starting out, I started in professionally in Brazil, so I was living in Recife at the time, and that's where I finished my university.
Oh, okay.
So
How
it
long
was
ago was
a
this?
way.
Not to expose you, but
Um,
sorry.
I was in yeah, I graduated computer science in 2006,
Okay.
and I found a job in 2004. So for the last 2 years, I was working a full time job in a game studio and going to university full credits, and I was basically not sleeping
Hmm.
for 2 years. And yeah, I shipped all the games and I graduated, but it
Man,
wasn't easy. I
did you?
actually had a little bit of amnesia at one point, and I had to kind of take a small break. But
Oh man, it must have been tempting to just drop out of school since you already had a job, right? Did you ever think about that?
I never thought about that because my family has always been really strong about higher education, and my parents insisted that I should pursue a master's and a doctoral degree. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not the way.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean it's
Not in
valuable.
games.
And then once you've
Yeah,
already
but
put
for
in some
games,
money
there's
into
not
it
much
too, it's
value in that unless you're going to be a graphics engineer or something similar like artificial intelligence engineer, then something super technical like that has some value. But if you're just gonna make games, then no.
oh sure. I mean on the resume though, at the very least, maybe get your foot in the door a little bit easier. But I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
And
it
then
depends
after
on
a
the
certain point,
studio.
yeah,
Some studios that might be more valued than others.
yeah.
Depends.
I didn't get a degree, and it was kind of difficult to get in.
Oh
But
yeah.
now I'm like 5 years in, and it's not so bad. Like I don't think that
Hmm.
I go apply for another job, they're really gonna make a big deal about that. The more work experience you have, I guess the less it matters.
Yeah, work experience is a lot more important than the degree. I work with a lot of people who have a high school degree and that's it, and they're self-taught because being self-taught is the most important talent and skill that you can have is the ability to learn and continue to learn because it never stops. You can never stop learning in this field.
For
But
sure,
yeah,
for sure.
after I was in Brazil, so I worked at a startup there. It was kind of an incubator scenario, making mobile games, and I moved to Finland. So I lived in Finland for 3.5 years, and I worked with a studio there called Sumea, who the folks there, it's an interesting story there because this was really like the beginning of the smartphone game explosion. And one of our games was the top app store game for about a year, which was Crazy Penguin Catapult. It was the predecessor of Angry Birds. And actually,
Oh,
the guys who built Angry Birds worked at Sumea first. And basically, like a lot of big studios like Supercell, King, um, Zepto Labs, a bunch of others
oh wow.
that I'm not remembering the names right now, are all people from Sumea.
That's like all the
Who,
early all the early hits. Yeah, Zepto. That's like cut the
yeah,
rope or something, right?
because back then there was only four companies that were doing it correctly. There was us, which was Digital Chocolate. It was the name of the corporation. So Digital Chocolate, the studio was Sumea, but the company was Digital Chocolate, if that makes sense. And then there was Electronic Arts, um, who basically just got there through acquisitions. They just bought studios who were doing it correctly. And then there was Gameloft. They might have bankrupt a few years ago. Not sure what happened to Gameloft, but they were kind of our biggest competitor.
Hmm.
And then there was Glue. So Glue's still around. They're still making mobile games. So, like those are the four ones that were doing it right. And then after that first wave, after monetization was inserted and in-app purchases were added, then it exploded, and there's like a million studios now. Things changed
Right,
pretty
right.
quick.
Yeah, there was that must have been fun working on mobile games before the microtransaction boom. I talked with
Mhm.
yeah, I did an interview with the developer of Jellycar, and he worked in mobile games for a long time, and he was talking about how he sort of started losing interest once he worked at Disney, and he sort of started losing interest as soon as it became it started feeling like every game was a marketplace more than like a game after a certain point. So that must have been cool to so I guess it's an experience you won't really get nowadays unless you just make like a hit mobile indie game or whatever. You're just making mobile games for fun.
Yeah, I think I respect that. I respect that sentiment that he's expressed. But for me personally, I you 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 have to respect the medium. Like you can't want the world to change for you, right? The world is the way it is, and you have to adapt. That's the reality. That's life.
True.
And the market is the way it is because of human nature. And so you can't wish that human nature was different. You just, if you want to make games that are successful, you have to design for people. People are your players, right? If you're not meeting their needs as defined by the market dynamics, then you're just wishful thinking. Now, there are niche exceptions, like if you're lucky enough to make the next Minecraft, right? It can happen, but that's not how you build for success. That's how you build as a hobby, and then maybe you're successful. Which that's a valid it's a valid way to do it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not criticizing that approach. I'm just saying that, um, yeah, like for me, my goal is to put my game in the hands of as many players as possible, and the way to do that
Yeah.
is by playing into the market dynamics.
Yeah. Well, your microtransactions in the mobile store, the mobile version of Stone Story are it's very generous. Like it's really not like the type of person that would complain about like the mainstream microtransaction environment. They probably wouldn't complain about Stone Story RPG in the same sort of way because it's really not
Mhm.
intrusive and just really not necessary. I mean, it's essentially you balance the mobile version of Stone Story the exact same as the Steam version, right? And Steam doesn't even have the ability to do any sort of
Yeah,
MTX.
it's not exactly the same, and we're going to make slight changes still because as we add new systems, we have to think about this new system, how it works on mobile, how it works on Steam. Because what I try to model it is that the person on Steam has already paid $30 in microtransactions, basically, and they're not going to pay any more. Like anything else they get after that is free. Right? So, in a sense, that is $30 is above average of what people actually spend on mobile. Even for the most successful game, even for a super hot game, and so you have to be generous, right, with the Steam player. But then you don't want to be super stingy with the mobile players either. So it's a difficult balancing act. But we just take it one system at a time, one feature at a time, and we try to figure out what's best that makes everyone happy as much as we can. But for example, how it's different. So some of the items in the crystal shop are more expensive on mobile. For example, the biggest difference is in the cosmetics. So golden treasure, when you open a golden treasure, it gives you a random cosmetic, and on PC it is 16 crystals for a golden treasure, and on discount, so it might be on sale, it might be 50% off. On PC, it might be 8 or 9 crystals, right? On on uh, on mobile, it's 59 crystals, so it's a lot more.
I see. I
Um,
didn't actually realize that.
yeah.
So you are a predatory. You admit it. We caught you. Um,
Well, there's a
no.
few differences, right? And then because cosmetics are less impactful for gameplay performance for power, then we can do the steepest difference there. and but it's also because the mobile players have also free ways they can watch ads and things like that can accelerate their play, and so that's not fair, right, for the PC player who doesn't have that as well.
Right.
It's difficult, and I'm not saying we've made the right decision and the right numbers for each of those, but we try, and yeah, we're open to feedback from players as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, but also, it's worth noting that you can play through the main story no problem in like less than 10 hours without even touching
Right.
any of that stuff. So, yeah. hard to
That won't
complain
be
about it.
true after we add parts 2 and 3 to the game, which are in pre-production now.
Oh, okay.
We're excited about that.
Exciting. Exciting.
Yeah,
I'll be playing
Acropolis
for
is
sure.
part 2, and then the Underworld is part 3. It's gonna be cool.
Do you have like an estimate of like by what percent that increases the amount of content in the game?
We're going to be at least doubling the content, probably a bit more.
That's awesome.
If everything pans out and everything goes as planned, a lot more than doubling, like maybe triple, quadruple. So I'm designing this event system I've mentioned already on my streams, and because when we release a new piece of content, so this is something that I recommend for any game that is kind of like a service game or MMO, for example. You make a new item or you make a new quest or something like that. You want to release that, right? You do a community event around that. And so what I've been trying to figure out is how can I monetize the release of new content? Because once I can do that, then I can make infinite content. Because I can't infinitely make content for a game that people have already paid for. It doesn't work. The economics of that doesn't work. Like, you pay $30 and then I make content for 10 years. No, I can't. I have to work on other games, right, in order to pay the bills. But if I can, every content I release, if I can get some revenue from that, then that can be a self-sustaining cycle of content, and then it never ends. It just ends when people stop playing. You know. So
Yeah,
once we have that figured out, then it can go 4 or 5x the content. But at minimum, we're going to be doubling the experience at the least.
well, how close are you to figuring that out? The monetization. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm implementing it right now. So we have a design, and it's about half the way implemented, planning to have it ready for the first week of December, maybe second week of December. So it's really close. And then we'll have the first version of that out, and we'll kind of look at the numbers and we'll see. Um, which brings me to a topic maybe we can talk about later, but I wanted to ask you about your approach to, do you use analytics in your games? But we can talk about that later. If you want to stick to
Um,
the
I mean,
something else.
what sort of analytics are we talking about?
Well, so for your games, do you hook up player funnel steps, so like events that player logs in, player creates character, player gets to the first objective, that sort of thing? Because
Not so
I
much.
found that.
Yeah, in terms of gameplay objectives, not
Mhm.
a little bit, but not so much in a way that is currently being intentionally used to plan for like monetization
Mhm.
and things like that. So my MMO project is the only game that I have that's more of a longer term thing. I've just done, besides that,
Okay.
I've mostly just done game jams, and I track things like
Oh yeah, I saw some of your game jams. I saw the witch, the dress up,
oh, the
and
dress up one.
the cat pinball, what?
Uh
Pinball,
oh
cat
yeah,
pinball is what I call it.
Scatterpaws. Yeah, so I have two game jam games. I have like a Faudian platformer thing, and then the cat pinball, and then the dress up game was just like a random. That one wasn't even a jam actually. It was just but I threw it together really fast because it was a dress up game. It
Mhm.
was just like a tie-in thing with the MMO. Yeah, I track things, and I try to track things before I actually make use of them because I know that I'll want them eventually. Like, so when it comes to things like session data, I track pretty in depth. Like, I know when someone logged in, and I know when someone logged out, and I know what platform they're
Mhm.
playing through and such. And obviously, I can peek into someone's save file and do whatever I want with that data. And I have the archival data because I have backups and things. Haven't done a lot with that. I've actually done. I have a friend who's into data science. He does data science for
Hmm.
the Cincinnati Reds, and he donated me a little bit of his time to actually peek into some of the RetroMMO database and just make some interesting like predictions about player behavior and thing. But it was more of a for fun thing. I haven't like practically used this to inform my any of my game design decisions.
Mm.
I
Well,
guess
monetization isn't the main reason. The main reason is retention.
I see. And this is something you're exploring or wanting to explore?
Oh yeah, with Stone Story, it's the first project that I really hardcore. Yeah, I made it a point to apply that knowledge, which I've messed around with in other projects. I've kind of what you're doing now is kind of like where I had been, and then for this game, I thought, you know what, I'm going to double down on that aspect and really use it to fine tune the experience to make sure that because that's how you measure the fun of the players when you're going person to person, when you have a prototype and you put it in someone's hand and you can ask them questions, you can kind of gauge their fun, how they enjoy the experience, that type of thing. But when you're doing it for 1,000 people, you can't, right? Ask. And this is where the bias, the data bias comes in, because when you start scaling, dozen, 100 people, um, the community that I have, the community that you have, like once we have like those groups of players, that is super biased data, because basically you're only getting feedback from players who have succeeded in retaining. So you're not getting any information from the players who tried the game and gave up. They're like, nah, this game sucks. Or like, why did they think the game sucks, right? They're never gonna tell you. So data is the only way for you to dig for that.
Yeah, I can be a bit stubborn too in terms of like I can obviously see a trend in new players complaining about one thing, but I like my
Hmm.
game. Well, because I play my game. My MMO is based off of an MMO I played as a kid that was abandoned, and I just made it because I was like
Okay.
really bummed out that my favorite game
When did you
went
start it?
away.
When did you start the project?
uh, I started, I guess, like really seriously trying to build it maybe 4 years ago, I'd say, and I
Hmm.
released the first public version 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I know your game is well, I guess
It's a lockdown game, huh?
a lockdown game. Oh, COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was pretty how do you say, like tunnel vision? Yeah, just not really putting a lot of time in anything else to my MMO for a long
Mm.
time. Yeah. But I know your game is also like I'm assuming you're probably a big fan of like Candy Box and that sort of stuff. You probably really enjoyed
Yeah, definitely.
those games yourself, or
Definitely.
maybe like maybe some influence from like older like terminal
Uh,
games or things like that
well,
too.
Candy Box is actually the first Candy Box is the game that got me interested in ASCII art in general. This was back in 2012, and I played that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, ASCII art. I remember that because in the early days of the internet, you couldn't even send an image over, right? Some people could if you had a if you had a 56K modem, you could send maybe a GIF or an image, but most people couldn't. With dial-up, quality was bad, so people would send ASCII, um, in their emails and in things like that, in forums and right that type of thing. Early internet. And when I saw Candy Box, it reminded me of that. I started digging around. I always appreciate good art when I see it, and I found this one artist, Joanne Stark, that I really liked her ASCII art. She's not a professional. She was a hobbyist, like a heavy hobbyist from the '90s, and she has huge archives online of her stuff. She just doodled every day, all day, and did like thousands of ASCII pieces. And not only her, but there's a ton of really great ASCII artists. And so, I first got the interest in the art form and just playing around with it and making my own experiments and my doodles and kind of emulating her style and looking at some other artists as well and emulating their art. And you start that way, and then eventually, if you do it long enough, you kind of develop your own. find your own style.
Hmm.
And that's what happened. But it was kind of a separate thing from the game, you know. And then when I needed a project, I was like, I came off the back of a failed Kickstarter for another game, and I was like, okay, I need a project that I can drive by myself to alpha. And when I was thinking about the art style, it occurred to me that that was a good choice. I ran some marketing tests, posted on TickSource and on Twitter and things like that. People really liked it. There was a lot of positive response. Nothing crazy, but there was enough where I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this works. And I guess the animation is something people had never seen before, like ASCII animation, right? It was super rare. Even Candy Box is all still images mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I enjoy animating. I've always animated, learned to animate when I was really young. And I was like, yeah, this is it. This is an idea. I always wanted to do a Western RPG as well, kind of Diablo style. But
Hmm.
um, I realized that, making a game like Diablo with that type of scope isn't something you can do by yourself. So I thought, okay, what can I do where I can have a playable prototype in 1 week? Because 1 week of development, if you can make a fully playable game with a loop in 1 week, that tells you that it's a viable project. If you can't do it in a week, then the idea is too ambitious, kind of a way to measure it. Of course, that only works if you're an experienced game dev. Right? If you're still learning to program, then it might take you as much time as you need to learn, right? But like if you already know what you're doing and it takes you more than a week, then it's a huge project.
Yeah, yeah. It took me a
Especially if you
while.
need multiple people, right?
It
How
took me
much
a
did it
while to
take
get
you?
comfortable doing game jams, and even like a 10-day game jam, it took me a lot of hours of practice before I was comfortable with
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Well, to sort of tie it back in, I'm curious if, like, since you're making a game that's almost could like somewhat be considered a spiritual successor, like as a fan, do you ever get like feedback from the more like casual type of Stone Story players, like maybe like mobile users or people that haven't played games like Candy Box, and they disagree with what you personally like? From like, is there ever a disparity there between what you personally like as like a diehard fan versus like the casuals, and is that difficult for you? Because that's what I struggle with. Is like, I tend
Mm,
to value my own
yeah.
opinion over. Maybe I could sacrifice my own opinion to appeal more to the masses, but I refuse to do so sometimes.
Well, there's a couple of things there. First is the bias that I already mentioned. Like if you're getting any feedback at all, even feedback like this sucks, someone is telling you, "Oh yeah, this I'm not enjoying this." That's already a different category of player that is more engaged. They care enough to tell you, right? So it's super biased. First of all, the second thing I would say is that um, a lot of times what the players are, and this is a very common thing, all game designers will deal with, is that players give you feedback and you have to try to understand what they mean by that. What is the actual problem under the hood is not usually what they're saying, because they are experiencing the game from the highest level of the experience. But there is all this underlying concepts and mechanics and engineering problems and bugs and all kinds of stuff underneath. And there is something down here that is the actual cause. And it's not a cosmetic gameplay experience problem, right? Sometimes it is, but um, more often than not, the fundamental cause of the issue, because the player sees a problem and they imagine a solution, or they had an expectation and your game is different than their expectation, and so the mix of those two things, like your game plus what they imagine, gives them what they tell you, right? But actually, like how you actually go about changing your game is going to be completely different from what they said. So that is one of the hardest parts about taking player feedback, but it's also one of the most important, because you have to listen to the feedback. And then what I usually try to do is I try to get feedback from multiple people, different people, separate, and then or over time accumulate feedback, and then I'm able to see the where those intersect. Does that make sense? And kind of
Hmm.
that reveals the true nature of the issue
For sure, for
once you have
sure.
more information.
Yeah, I still think it's
And
a
I
really
think
hard balance though, just especially when your game is such a niche. It
mm,
feels like it's so hard to determine when should I
yeah.
acknowledge that maybe this would appeal more to the masses, but I'm going to choose to not do that because I want to hone in on this niche. It seems like a tough decision to make.
Well, in my case specifically, the fact that there's an AI controlling the main character was a big bummer for a lot of players because they see the trailer, they see the art style, they really are like, "Wow, this is awesome!" But they're an action player and they want to be in control. There's different personalities, right? For me, I'm kind of what I call the puppet master type of player, where I want to control the characters. I'm not the avatar in the character, right? You see what I mean? I don't feel like the character is me, right? Some players want to be the character, and that's, you want to play a game like God of War. Like that's your type of game. It's not my type of game. My type of game is uh Warcraft, right? I have dudes that I tell them to do things and they go and they do it. I tell a guy to mine the gold in the mine and he's gonna mine that gold until that mine runs out. Like that's my type of play. And so when I came to Stone Story and I decided to make it self-playing, this was more about making a game that was flexible enough to be on any platform, on mobile platforms, on PC, um, maybe on a smartwatch, even something like that is what I was thinking in the early days. And I had plenty of examples of that. So there was Nonstop Night, there was Candy Box, there's a ton of idle games that were popping around that time. And I'm like, yeah, I love playing idle games. I don't see any problem with this. And a lot of players really enjoyed it as well. So I do get feedback from people saying, no, I wish I could control the character, but they don't realize like that is a fundamental change, right? That is a completely different game. The moment you can freely control your character, and I welcome anyone who is a hacker or wants to mod Stone Story, you're welcome to. I can show you which class it is. Yeah, you can go in and add a input controller, and it's not going to be fun. I guarantee you. Like you're going to have to do a lot more work to make that work. It's going to be a novelty if you're already familiar with Stone Story. It's going to be a novelty for like 5 minutes that you can actually move your character around and swing the swords. But your performance in combat is going to be shit compared to what the AI can actually do.
Right. Right. Well, it's just I mean, it's kind of comparable to like the people that play Stone Story RPG using the automated scripting versus the people that play manually toggling their loadouts. It's kind of the same deal there. Do you have? Is that one of the things that you sort of track and spend time thinking about? Is like how many people play? How many people play completely avoiding the scripting versus how many people play? Acting like a software engineer playing the game.
That question specifically is something that I've started looking at recently, and I'm considering, and it's been a suggestion from the community for a long time, which is to add a visual scripting component on the Mindstone. So it would have dual mode where you have the casual mode, you can kind of move the blocks and okay, if this enemy, and then you can pick from a drop down which enemy it is, and you can see the names and the icon of the enemy appear. So you can like casually pick, okay, if this enemy, then this weapon, and do it visually, right, with UI. I think that can be first of all possible to implement. Isn't It's not hard. I mean, I built an entire, not by myself, but I built a real-time multiplayer engine with editor, and so which was core, which was my recent project that I shipped. um, I can build that's not a, it's not an impossible thing to do, first of all, right? So technically viable is a really important question to answer. um, but then you have to think about, okay, from the user point of view, if you're a first time user coming in, this is always the most important thing. First time user coming into the game, they're reaching that point in the experience. What do they see? What do they experience? What are the steps that they go through? That's the part that I'm working on, kind of conceptually. I like to have these design tasks in the background that I'm kind of chipping away at slowly. That's one of them. So I'm busy working on some other stuff. I'm working on the event system and the monetization, all this stuff and the retention. But I'm thinking about this visual programming UI, and I haven't quite figured out the first time user experience and the user interface, how that's going to go. But at some point, I think we can add that. That'll change it for a lot of people. Kind of like how when we added offline farming, it changed the game for a lot of people. Sometimes you hit these changes. It sucks when you do a big change like that and nothing happens, right? You don't get any result
Mm-hmm.
in the data. The data looks the same, or you get like a 0.5% improvement. Sometimes you do a change like that and you see a 10-20% improvement. And um, yeah, this might be one of those 10 to 20% improvement changes. It has the potential to be.
I see. So I guess that implies that maybe you're not the happiest with the gameplay experience in terms of completely ignoring the scripting. Like, do you think that there's like it's just too difficult, or maybe just not as fun?
Mm,
What's holding it
no,
back?
I think, well, what's holding me back from implementing it is that
Well,
there's
just
other
mean like
things that
what's
I
holding
consider more
the
important.
why
I
would
think,
adding it give a plus 20% in your eyes? Why like do you think that
mm,
players that are ignoring scripting are having a hard time in certain ways?
yes, because when you're building a game for a wide audience, there's players of all kinds, all types, different ages, different knowledge. They bring their previous knowledge from other games and from academia. They bring like to the game, and so you get the stratification of many different experiences, and that's really hard to design an experience that is a single experience for all those different people. Right? It's super difficult, and this is one of those cases where we can add that optionality where, hey, here's a tool set for some players and here's another tool set for other players, right? And then people can go from one to the other and they can graduate from the visual part to the full on programming eventually, right? So they can kind of do both.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think there is a segment of the player base that gets to that point, gets to the Nagaraja temple, gets the Mind Stone, and then they're intimidated by the scripting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is actually a majority of
Mm.
players. I think it's going to be around, of the people who get to that point and get the Mind Stone, I'm going to say about 70% of people are intimidated by the scripting and don't even want to learn it. Of the 30%, some already know how to program. It's going to be like 1%. And then the others are willing to learn the basics. Okay, if this, equip that, and yay, cool, right? Activate potion if my health. So I've included some tutorials and things like that. But I think once we add the visual scripting, then it's going to take a slice of both sides of that problem. Like people who are who are already on the other side of the line will be even more interested, more engaged, and retain better. And then people who would have never made the leap. So that's where I think is 20%. And then there's also going to be people who are going to look at that and be like, what the hell is this? Even the visual scripting, you're going to be like, that's too complicated for me." So I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, I'm estimating about 10 to 20% of people that we're going to service with that system change.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, I was just thinking like the gameplay experience is not bad. Like I don't think that I even hardly touched the scripting at all, just playing through the main story. I think
Hmm.
it's really once it was once that whatever that first event was after leaving early access, it was the
Hammer time.
yeah, the hammer time. I think I streamed like
Yeah, hammer time was awesome. People really loved the hammer
I
time.
grinded out like
Yeah.
10 hours just like doing the scripting for the first time because I just wanted to get it so bad. But you know, up until that point, as
Hmm.
a casual player, if I didn't know anything about scripting, I would have been fine because I mean, playing the game manually is perfectly
No,
fine.
yeah, it definitely is. But what we found is that people who engage with the scripting retain better,
Yeah.
because, and this is something I've learned about game design, is that, and this speaks to a lot of truth about why you need a game to, first of all, fit into a genre, but also be different enough that it has novelty value, is because when the player is playing your game, they are learning. They're learning about your game. and that learning is what's going to stay. It's going to stick. You're literally reprogramming the player's brain. Sometimes in a bad way, sometimes in a good way. Usually, you don't really know if it's good or bad. That's the truth, is that you don't know if it's good or bad for them. But the with any game, take a game when you feel that fun, like when you're playing a game for the first time and you feel like, oh, I'm enjoying this. You're being reprogrammed, and when that is happening, um, that is the retention factor of the game. It's
Yeah.
you're transforming as a player. You're transforming into a player of that game, and that's what you want as a designer. And so StoneScript is a way to do that. It is that system. Like once you learn StoneScript, that knowledge is locked into this game, right? And hopefully in the future we can expand it and we can create an engine, and that's kind of part of the plan that can be used in some other games as well.
Yeah.
But for now, it's only here.
Yeah. Well, you have doubled down on that in terms of the the link between the community engagement and the scripting in a couple different ways as well. In the sense that like you do these stone jams where like you allow players to submit stone script creations that get
Hmm.
featured or could get used or that sort of thing. And then also, well, I mean, also just the fact that you would run an event like the Hammer Time thing. I think at least one of the challenges for that one actually was like a scripting only challenge. So I'm sure that some of that can be attributed to the
Hmm.
it's like what are people going to talk about in the Discord? Probably the custom scripting stuff because there's no ceiling to it, right? I mean, it's like much like
Yeah, that's part of the
the
funnel, right? Because I want to set up some challenges in the event that are gradually in difficulty. So you do basic things. You use the weapon, you activate its ability, this and that. You kill X number of enemies, and then after you've done it all, if you want the final prize, the highest prize, you have to use the scripting language to use the weapon to its maximum effect, right? And then some players will be like, nah, I'm okay with the almost perfect treasure, but other players are going to be like, you know what, I want that last star on that treasure, and I'm going to learn stone script, right? Like yourself. And that's the purpose of that, is to kind of graduate people. That's one of the purposes, right? Is to use that we're going to do the event, so we might as well try to tie everything together and then graduate people into using the scripting language. When we introduced stone script, it was like it was a language that I created in 1 week and I integrated into the game really fast. It was simple, very really simple language. And one of the first things people did, there was only one print statement that you could, it was intended for debugging, that you could print onto the top left corner of the screen, whatever you wanted, whatever text you wanted. People started doing pets and cosmetics immediately, like the moment that StoneScript was introduced.
yeah.
And so that really drove the direction of the language, and the stone jam, right? Things like that. And it really changed the game. So the interaction with the community has totally changed the game. And a lot of the stone jam submissions. So we did stone jam now. It just ended a week ago. It's stone jam 6. So it's the sixth year already. And previous submissions we have used as in-game content. So the pet ghost that follows you around was community created. The the skull head from the Mr. Palace Wild Ride quest. Have you played that one? So there is
Hmm.
this you can, if you have the moon dial, you can go into big head mode, and then Augie can paint your head to look like a skeleton head, and then you can infiltrate into the haunted halls
Right.
so the skeletons don't attack you. And the skeleton head was a community creation, and
Oh, okay.
a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
remember one of the first. I remember Frulu made me a car. Was one of the first things when I was grinding that Hammer Time thing. You made me like, just so ridiculous.
A
Yeah, silly
car
stuff.
for your character.
Yeah, he just wrapped my character in a car. It's beautiful, and it had like, well,
Cool.
so I used to be sponsored by a web dev school called
Mhm.
Covalence, and he made me a big
Okay.
car that had like it said like Covalence and like
Nice.
different
I
colored
didn't see that.
different colored textures. I think it was
Did
funny.
he? Did you share? Is Frullo on the line? Did he share the?
I'm sure I could find a clip of it, but
Okay.
no, it was a few
Share it in
months
the
ago.
community.
Yeah, it was awesome.
We had 75 submissions this jam. It was crazy. We're having a hard time
Oh wow.
processing it. The last one was 22, something like that, 23. And so yeah, I tripled, quadrupled in
Oh
a
yeah, he gave me really long. He gave me like glorious locks as well. Driving in my car with my like 5 foot long hair. That was beautiful.
I want to
Um.
see that.
Oh man, that reminded you mentioning the quest reminded me. I really like the writing and the or just like this the overall
Oh, thanks.
tone that the quests present. It really reminds me of
Hmm.
like something like RuneScape. I appreciate how lighthearted it is. I don't know, but there's also just like some cohesion. I'm trying to think of like other things that it reminds me of, but it's like that it's like you feel interested in the story. Like it doesn't just feel like memes, it doesn't feel like jokes, but it has this like lighthearted nature to it where it's not taking itself too seriously as well. And I was just curious like what your influences were in terms of quest writing.
Well, I didn't write most of the quests, so Henry did a great job with that. He's our writer. He does the dialogues and everything. And I mean, we've collaborated, right, in Stone Story, and I kind of set the initial pace for the world design and the characters and everything like that. But then I gave him opening to do whatever he wanted to introduce new characters. But I asked him, you have to introduce new characters that can make the world grow, right? We need growth in the world in terms of personality and also characters that we can use in other stories, that we can continue the story, that it doesn't just end in that quest, right? Open-ended threads that we can pull
Yeah.
on later and continue keep going, because I always have this plan of doing like parts 2, parts 3, and maybe part 4 or 5. um and so yeah, he went wild with that. I'm not sure what his references are, but he's a super talented writer. Been working with him for a few years now. And yeah, I also really enjoy his writing. um, and I yeah, I try to, because I'm more serious when I write more serious characters.
Mm.
So like Paulus is more my writing.
Yeah. Man, I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
watched like Adventure Time or something like that, but it's like some serious material, or it's like it's not completely just like jokes,
Hmm.
but also this like
Yeah, I'm
this
familiar with
childlike nature to it.
Adventure Time.
It's like halfway between like Adventure Time and Undertale or something. That's what Stone Story makes me
Hmm.
think of.
Yeah, I think he took it also from the name. So you have the big ass snail and things like that. So the enemy names.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the spiders are called like nail biter, and the bats are neck warmer. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So so I think he kind of took it from there and kind of. And but then if you look at the backstory for the bosses and for things, that is super serious. It's like super hardcore. And then he kind of mixed it together, added some fun characters. Another thing is that with the quests, you don't have to win. It's not like um, in the main game you're fighting, you're hitting stuff, and you're killing stuff. But in the quests, you don't have to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your motivations can be different, so that kind of steps away from the violence and into the revelry, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice that the quests actually have like a little bit of like branching like decisions and stuff like that. I mean, especially in terms of idle games, like you're just expecting like do this thing X amount of times. And I mean, there's some of that in the quest too, but it's like a kind of similar to RuneScape again, where it's like they can be multi
Hmm.
parts and you can have different pieces back to back and decisions and
Hmm.
stuff. Even though
Yeah.
it's not super complex, it's at least it feels like it gets you a little bit more immersed in the world, which
Do
I
you do the
appreciate.
writing in your MMO?
I do, but we don't even have quests in the MMO yet, so there's not a whole lot going on. But yeah, I mean, I write the NPC tag, or take suggestions from Twitch chat or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I've got big plans. I want to have like cutscenes, like how you'd see out of like an old Final
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy game or something, stuff like that. It probably won't be so much like the branching decisions like you'd see in like Stone Story or RuneScape or something, but I do yeah, and I'd hope to capture that same sort of like somewhat serious, somewhat lighthearted that you'd. I mean, that's kind of like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and those types of games kind of have a little bit of a history of that as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'll be. I mean, that's what I'm looking
Yeah, I
forward
was.
to. I'm looking forward to the day that I'm not grinding hours and hours of code and that I'm actually doing like a little bit more content development. The times that I have done like holiday events and have gone to actually do like little content pieces that kind of like have like a little bit of a story, that's
Mm,
it's like some of the most satisfying work to me. It's like yeah, actually it's like
mm.
actually a little bit of artistic stuff going on there.
But I do want to challenge you to hook up the funnel, study the funnel, and measure your day one retention. Also, do you measure that?
I mean, I
So
could
the
look it up.
percentage of players who come back the next day after playing.
I definitely have that data. I haven't analyzed it, but yeah. Well,
But
I mean,
yeah,
also the thing with
that is the key.
my MMO project is so early along. I
Mm,
mean, there's people that have managed to put hundreds of hours into it because they just want to grind all the holiday events and these sort of things. But in terms of like
okay.
the new player experience, um, there's like make your fresh account and then kill the only boss in the game, do the only dungeon, kill the boss one time. That experience should be like a 3 hour experience if you've like ever played a RPG before. So it's like there's not a lot to I'd get a lot more out of like studying these things once I actually have some content in the game, pretty much is what I'm trying to say. It's like
Mm,
all the I
hmm.
already know what all the well, maybe I'm naive, but I kind of feel like I've already heard all the same complaints a million times and I know what are the biggest things I need to work on. I think the large. I mean, I think most people would probably agree. The larger the scale of your game grows, the harder it is to manually pick up on those things. And yeah, I've just been
Yeah,
I've spent so
yeah.
much
You
time
need
just
more
deep in the
data once
tech.
you get to a higher scale. That's true. Yeah, the bigger the scale, the more you need to rely on data.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and my MMO project is a whole thing. It's actually on a hiatus right now because I work at an MMO company right now, and they don't want me
Oh yeah.
touching it. Yeah,
Oh,
and I've also I've only been coding
how long have you been
professionally.
there?
I've been there since February. Um, And I've had, in terms of like salaried software dev stuff, it's only been 5 years. So you can imagine what I started on this MMO 4 years ago. I was a newbie 5 years
Hmm.
ago. Obviously, I had to like rewrite a lot of engine code every day, all the
Mm,
time.
hmm. Hmm.
So I've just been pretty stun locked on the tech work. But yeah, the future is bright. Hopefully.
It's TypeScript, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, I just went with a full stack TypeScript thing because that's just what I learned. I didn't go to college, but I did like a web dev school. It was like a 3 month or like a
Hmm.
boot camp. I don't know if you've heard of that. It was a 3 month program, maybe like 400 hours, and yeah, I did a couple years of like just web dev work, like marketing agency or like tech startup type of stuff, and then was able to, I guess, like leverage my indie dev to sort of get like more game related roles. So that's been cool. I'd love to have a game role though that doesn't prevent me from working on my MMO. That would be pretty
Mm,
nice.
hmm.
um, well, you've had quite a lot of professional game dev roles, right? We mainly just touched on the early mobile stuff. Are there any other standout experiences you had in the industry that have influenced you?
One game that I really enjoyed working on was Mountain Goat Mountain. That was a mobile game. I mean, most of my published games are mobile. One of the problems that um, working with a publisher is that they kind of over time they'll just kill the project because there's no motivation for them to even keep maintain because you have to maintain once you have a game out on the app store or something like that. You have to maintain it compatible with the latest devices and things like that. And so over time, they just took it down. But yeah, Mountain Goat Mountain was the one I really enjoyed playing. I would like to. So Zynga has the IP for that now. I would like to do a sequel for that as a multiplayer
Hmm.
game.
You were just really
It's
happy with the
playable,
gameplay
I
on that
think, on the
one?
Oculus. Sorry.
Oh, you were just really happy with the gameplay on that one? Why did that one stand out to you?
Yeah, it's super fun. It's an infinite climber. So you're a goat, you're climbing the mountain, you get coins, you eat grass to keep up your energy, and it's very dangerous. So there's rocks, falling trees, water you can drown in.
Mm.
But super fun, high paced game. Uh, two thumb tap, like tap left, tap right,
Oh, okay.
and you just hop, 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 hop up the mountain. It's super fun.
Oh, I might have. I feel like
Um,
I've played a similar game to this
I built it
before.
in 3 months, and it was a huge success in China because it was the year of the goat when we launched it.
Oh,
Coincidentally,
that was
it was
coincidental.
kind of was
Oh,
coincidental,
hell
yeah.
yeah. Nice.
Um, yeah, I'd love to do a sequel for that because it was just so much fun. It might still be playable on the Oculus, so you can might be able to find it on the Oculus store. We ported it for Apple TV as well, so it might be there.
Apple TV.
But
How do you
yeah,
play a game on Apple
there's a
TV?
huh
How do you play a game on an Apple TV?
with the remote,
Oh
right,
my
left,
god.
right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, take the game where the players are, is what I say. Um, there is an APK on kind of there's these archival websites, right, that have old APKs, so it can be found for
Oh,
Android.
okay.
Yeah, I still have it on one of my phones.
Oh, nice.
Should boot it up and check it out.
Are you are
Um,
you full-time indie dev right now on Stone Story RPG, or do you have a
yeah,
job as
right
well?
now I am.
Oh, okay. How long have you been
No,
doing
I'm
that?
full time. It's been on and off. So when I started Snow Story, I was 9 months full time on it um, back in 2014, and then I just kept developing it on the side, averaging. So I picked up projects at different studios. So one of them was Mountain Go Mountain at Zynga. So I picked that up, and I was full time doing that. But then I also kept a rate of about 14 hours a week on Stone Story.
Oh, okay.
That's been my average. And then last year Manticore. I left Manticore Games where I published Core, so that was what I mentioned earlier. And I've been full time on Stone Story. And then
Nice.
we were going towards the soft launch, so we released in Korea and in a few other Southeast Asia regions. And yeah, so I left Manticore and focused on that, and then scaling it up. So now we're in global launch, um, and for a few months now, and we're having good success in the United States now, which is the biggest market. It's done all right in Japan as well, which is one of the main. We're having some trouble in some big markets like Germany. So
Okay.
for some reason, we can't, find players there, but maybe we'll figure it out at some point. We're going to try different channels. So we use advertising to get the players, but so it's an interesting business model, and that's one of the main differences between like a PC game and a mobile game is that um, on PC you get a lot of organic traffic. So for example, on Steam will push players to you. And the reality is that there's not that much competition on PC
Mm,
and console as well compared to mobile. Mobile is like 200 times more games competing for the same
gotcha.
players. So then you have to lean into advertising. On the plus side, you can just spend money and get the users that you want. Um, and you can't do that on PC. It's a lot harder to do that on PC. So it's kind of like, you know, pros and cons, different dynamics, and it's working for us. We just have to improve the metrics, improve the retention. Our day one is pretty good, but our day 30 is weak, so we need to make that better. And yeah, like I mentioned about the content monetization as well. So it's coming along. And hopefully we'll have that out by December. And then there's the Christmas. There will be a Christmas event, and then so on, and then it just keeps going. At some point, ideally, so the plan is to hit a point where we have every 3 weeks there's a content drop. So that's the cadence, 3 to 4 weeks. So if we slip, it'll be once a month, but then the goal is every 3 weeks. So new weapon, new quest, new location. And we're going to start releasing the Acropolis locations, for example, so you can go and talk to Lilith the White Tree and get her wisdom and meet the citizens and so on.
It's a lot of work, man. Every 3 to 4 weeks of content push. So I guess you probably plan on being able to do the full-time Stone Story thing for a while. Is that like indefinitely full-time indie is kind of what you hope to be doing?
Ideally, I can independently do more than one game simultaneously.
Yeah.
So I've always done two games at the same time, always. And right now, I'm focusing on Stone Story because it needs uh, so much work. But at some point, if I can find the right people and I can find the right cadence of the content, so once I've designed the world with the writer, so we're working on parts 2 and 3 from a design point of view, and we're doing all the systems. So once the systems are in place and we have the right developers, okay, so for example, like here's the weapons that you're going to make, and here's the quests that you're going to script, and like I have, a few devs on that pipeline, then I can just help them when they need help and not be head down on that. And then I can start up the next game, which is really my goal, is to get Stone Story to that point where it's cruising and it's just, shipping content every week. And then I'm developing, designing, testing the new game. And I have so many different candidate games, maybe more than one, um, depending on how things go. Like I could have, if I have the right scenario, I could have 3 4 games developing at the same time.
Yeah, you're
Um,
practically talking about running a game studio at that point.
yeah, that's the idea.
That'd be cool. Like, I mean, is that your goal? Is to be able to have like a business entity where you've got people salaried and you're just pushing out stuff all the time? Is that what you're hoping is the?
Yep, that is. We have a business entity, and
Yeah, well, I mean, I figured,
you know,
but
the
you don't have
salaries aren't
salary
very
employees,
good
though.
yet.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, everybody's like part-time contractors. I figured
Yeah,
that. Gotcha.
yeah. Everyone's part time, and well, not everyone. A few people, a couple people are full time, but
Oh, okay.
um,
Okay, so you're doing a lot. More hours are being put into this game than I realized. Yeah.
oh yeah, tons of time. I mean, I don't even want to mention the the cost.
Oh man.
People don't believe how much goes into making a game like this. It looks simple on
Yeah.
the surface, but there's so much work in the back. So many subsystems and little details like customer support tools and all kinds of stuff that you just don't see, right?
Mm.
Um, Database, etc. Right?
So you must
Lots
have
of
put in
stuff.
like a pretty sizable like personal investment into this then, huh? Or
Yeah. Yes.
gotcha. Well, hey, I mean, you're getting users. It seems like you're on a good track here, and you have specific articulable plans on how you're going to get more attention and such. So I don't know. I mean, how do you feel stressed? Do you feel iffy, or do you feel very confident that you're moving in the right direction?
I feel pretty confident. It's nice when the things you're trying to do are in your control and you're not depending on other people, right? Or something else that's out of your control. Something that really sucked. So at one point I was working on web games and doing games on Facebook. So there was kind of a 2008 time, right, where
Like
big
flash
Facebook
games?
games were, yeah, flash games, yeah, for Facebook. And Facebook is always changing their algorithm and destroying your business plan, and you have to like fight for that every day, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Having something stable that you can depend on, right? Like Steam, App Store, it changes, but it changes slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want something that you can plan for, because if you're going to be building a game that takes 10 years to develop, like the market can't have, not just the market, but the platform can't have completely shifted in that time, right? So, but yeah, so I do feel confident to answer your question, because I have the right people. So the people who are helping me build this game. I respect their work, and we're doing something great. And they're awesome. They're delivering, and we missed a few deadlines, but um, it's also kind of my fault because we had a plan, and then I had to change the plan because I realized that it was exactly this content problem that I'm telling you about the content monetization and the event
Mm.
system. That's the issue, because like once I started like running the numbers, I'm like, this isn't going to work in the long term. It's not long term sustainable, right?
Yeah.
It'll work now for the next few months, but it won't work for 2 years. And so I put pause on all the events. Like, so we have items backed up. We have I even held up the Fire Talisman a couple of extra weeks. We have we have 4 quests that are done. We have 2 lost items that are done, and a few other things that are partially done. Green locations, so we kind of pushed green locations back, green difficulty, we pushed that back further on the roadmap, because we want to spend the development time now on, okay, let's fix the business model, let's fix the improve the retention, improve the monetization, so that it's a self-sustaining business that can pay for the content production, so
Hmm.
that it can just go on, right? And then, so that's the point where I'm trying to get
Yeah.
to. And
Converting
so
your
in order to
product
get,
into a service, essentially.
yeah, in order to do that, I had to kind of delay the plan, kind of readjust. New things that I hadn't expected jumped in front, and okay, let's fix these things first, and then we'll do the content release that we already have accumulated. Because while that content is releasing, you're working. So if you're hitting a 3 week cadence, content drop every third week, you're actually like 2, 3 contents ahead on the production, right? You're working on stuff that is for 2 months from now. And the content that's dropping now, it's been ready for a month or two, right? That's the idea. Like, you want to build some lead time. You don't want to be like chasing your tail
Yeah.
um, too closely, right? You want to have some
Although I bet a lot of games
buffer
are,
content.
but yeah.
Yeah, I think most you end up in that situation, but you don't want to start in that situation.
Right.
You want to at least have some buffer content. We ran that experiment when we released 3.0 a few years ago. We ran the experiment. We accumulated 10 quests and some lost items, and then we released those on a cadence every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and we got up to a much higher day 30 retention, because players had kind of content to expect and engage
Hmm.
with, and we predict the same will happen again. So we just need to build up that backlog of content, have the proper systems in place. Once we do that, I think we'll be in good shape. And then I can start executing on the rest of the plan, which is to release parts 2 and 3 of the game, green difficulty, and then spin up a second or third game. Yeah, I have a puzzle game I really want to work on. It's been on my mind for a long time, and there's a clicker game as well, and a card battler,
Okay.
among others. So those are kind of the 3 highest contenders.
How do you how do you go about that? I mean, you seem such like a business minded, like statistics driven person. What's your process for like deciding what's a game idea worth putting some time into prototyping?
Well, so you remember how I told you that when I started Stone Story, I told myself I'm going to focus on analytics for this project specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done that, and I've learned how to work that into my workflow and my process. Um, there's something that I've never done before, which is what I want to do with the next game, and it is to go marketing first. Marketing first is how I define it, where you run kind of like fake campaigns. Actually, a lot of companies do this, and you have a design for a game. You're like, okay, card battler where it looks like this, and you do some concept art, and you do maybe some basic prototyping, and you spend a month doing that, and you have things to show. You can build like a little trailer, a little demo of what the game's going to be like, and you run a marketing campaign, and you see like what the numbers look like. If the players are clicking, if the players are interested, who are the players who are interested? So you can kind of start seeing like, okay, these players also like, you don't know who the people are individually, but you know um, their their profile, right? Like their age range, and um, do they like sports? Do they like this? Do they like that? Right? Like you can kind of start getting a profile, so you can measure the size of the market. So you're like, okay, this is potentially a $60 million opportunity if we're super successful. Is that big enough? Yes. If you do another experiment, and it's like, okay, this is and at best case scenario, $2 million. Like that's not worth the time. So maybe it's an art style problem. So you try to maybe find another artist to do a concept, and then see how that plays in the market, and kind of iterate on that first. So once you find something that clicks and you're like, oh wow, this is a huge opportunity. We found this huge segment, untapped player base, and they want this game. Now let's build a game. Right. So I want to try that marketing first approach for my next project and see how that goes. It's something that a lot of teams do already, and it's kind of like recommended as a best practice at this point in the games industry.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of studios do that.
Yeah. It's tough though. I mean, you got to have some capital to begin with there to just throw out marketing for a game that you don't even know if it's you're gonna end up going with it. But I mean, yeah, I
Well,
guess
you'll be
that.
surprised because you can actually get a lot of information by doing a small campaign. So
Hmm.
if you have, let's say, $1,000, and you split that over time, so you want to do a little bit every day, and you can split it into $100 a day, let's say, in acquisition. So with $100, you can get um, 400, 500 players, roughly. If the numbers look good. So if the numbers look bad, so the worse that it's performing, the more expensive it's going to be to acquire the users, right? That makes sense, right? If the campaign isn't resonating with the player base, then it's going to cost you more to find the people, to search and find them. If it is resonating, it's going to be cheaper. You're going to get more people clicking, more users for less money. That's how you know. That's how you measure the success. You can kind of compare it to a benchmark of your previous projects. So now we do have a benchmark. We have Stone Story as a benchmark, and we can also talk to some of our friends in other games and ask them what they think of this benchmark, and yeah, we can find it that way. But yeah, with a small budget, you can spend maybe $2,000 building a prototype, and then another $1,000 on the marketing, and you've got yourself an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for a student that's a lot, but for a studio that's not a lot.
Yeah. Gotcha. Right. So essentially, I guess you're just gonna go that route with your puzzle game, and if people love it, keep on with it. If not so much, try something else.
The puzzle game is different because the puzzle game, I've already implemented the prototype, and it's a killer. It's a killer game. I know it, and I've already got 52 levels designed for it, which is not
Oh
enough
shit.
anymore. But that one doesn't have an art style. It's all placeholder art. So I need to find the art style for that one. So it is the same process that I described for the marketing first, but it's a different situation. because I already believe in the game. I just need to find the art style. We can try a pixel art. We can try a 3D. There's obviously inside of those two, there's a million different ways. Gosh, I mean, the pile of game ideas that we have, that our team has, is huge. Like, ideas are not the problem. It's just time.
Yeah.
Well, we got to pick one and try it, and then if we can't, so it's kind of like you're in a maze and you're trying to find a way out. So you're testing different things and you're trying to find a way out. And once you find, you're like, oh wow, this is the audience. It's huge. Then full steam ahead.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up here, maybe we could dig into the nuance of the marketing, advertising things a little bit in terms of, I guess we could just start with in terms of Stone Story RPG. How did you
Mm.
determine which platforms and which types of ads and things to put your money towards? And
Mhm.
yeah, what was the process there?
Well, first we started with Facebook a while back, and we ran some experiments just driving people to our Steam page. And we found out that the best results were coming from Turkey and South Korea. Now, the problem with Turkey is that they have low acquisition power. They're suffering from high inflation. They have deteriorating economy. They might recover, but they're having a hard time. South Korea, they have more buying power. Um, so we decided, you know what, when we go mobile, right? Because South Korea is super heavy on mobile. Um, they also have a big PC segment, which is different from Japan. So kind of like you can expect similar tastes in terms of style of the game within these countries that are nearby, usually. But but the platform distribution is very different. So in Japan, it's all mobile and very few PC, and but in South Korea, it's kind of a little bit of both. And so when we went mobile, we started there because we're like, okay, let's start with our best audience first, and that'll give us the most confidence going in. We see the numbers, and we're like, okay, we can work with this. And how do we build the business, and how can we imagine those numbers will translate to the rest of the world, and kind of build a spreadsheet with projections and things like that. And and then for advertising channels, we had started with Facebook, but then we switched to Google Ads for our soft launch campaign, and we've been using that. We've been trying to um, make it work with some other ones. We tried TikTok, we tried Facebook again, and we tried Unity ads, and we haven't been able to get those to work effectively. Oh, we also tried Apple's keyword search ad search. I don't know what they call it. They have some name for it. But yeah, we tried Apple, TikTok, Unity ads, and Facebook, and the problem we're having there is installation attribution. So when you buy a campaign, so you give money to the TikTok, whatever, and they show your thing and it drives clicks. Um, when you see installs for the game, how can you connect with the campaign, right? That was specifically on TikTok. And so that technology we've been struggling with over the last month, and we're working on it. So that is one of the bottlenecks right now for us, is in terms of growth, is figuring
Mm.
that out and getting a technology, because there's some third party solutions out there, super expensive stuff. Like they're asking for 5,000 a month plus 3 cents per install. And I'm like,
Mm.
whoa, cowboy, hold on.
And this is, I mean, you think AAA studios are all doing like this, using these sort of services, or no?
mm, AAA like console? No.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe not
This
the
is more
top
of a
of the top,
mobile.
but oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, on mobile, the highest grossing games, they might have their own technology. So I think King definitely has their own, that I actually know the guys who build it. but I don't know the other ones. But I think every top student, like if you see a successful game on mobile, they've used something like this.
Something like that. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. But there's just a million solutions. So we're kind of like looking through what's exists in third party. We're kind of looking at different prices, and we also worry about user privacy, right? So there are certain ones like the Facebook SDK. I don't want to install the Facebook SDK into Stone Store because I respect your privacy. And so there is that. That's a big problem that we're dealing with. So we're kind of trying to figure out. We might end up writing our own, which is kind of usually how I roll. I look at this stuff and then I'm like, integrate Lua, integrate JavaScript. Now I'll just create Stone script. That's fine. Like, just create my own programming language in 1 week and it's good to go. I wrote my own JSON parser because the existing JSON wasn't good enough for me. So
There you go.
maybe that's the way that we'll go with that as well, but we'll see. I have an engineer working with me, helping with that. That's a tricky one. Once we crack that, then we'll be able to, I think, scale the community even larger, get
Hmm.
more people. Yeah, we're kind of tapping out of. We're still getting tons of players from Google Ads, but um, it's only one channel, right? So we're testing with still images now, so we're testing with static ads, banner ads.
Okay.
Kind of see how that goes. We don't know yet. We don't have the data yet on that. We just started this week on that. But yeah, one step at a time, and hopefully we have all those channels in different capacity running. And basically, also what we're doing, and this is important, is to take notes and kind of keep a record of your experiments and your results because uh, that's part of the value that you're generating as a developer, as a studio, is that knowledge and those techniques. What worked, what didn't work, because when you launch your next game, you can kind of use that knowledge and take some shortcuts.
Hmm. For sure. Well, I guess contrasting the process for what you did with Stone Story to the more like exploratory marketing that you were describing before, like trying to find out if a game is viable. I guess you were saying with Stone Story, some of your first advertising marketing was just getting people to look at a Steam page, I guess, wish list or whatever, and work
Yeah,
off
yeah, I
of
guess we
that.
kind of did that. We did that in a sense, but we already had the game. It's different because we had the game and we were just trying to figure out where to take it, which is
Hmm.
different from what I'm talking about for the new games, which is we know where we want to take it. We want to take it to everyone, basically, like the largest possible player share that we can find. It's a search process to find a style, a visual style, and a language, and like how you worded the name of the game and the description and everything that gets the maximum number of traffic. And so it's kind of a different, but yeah, the tools like the advertising techniques and stuff are the same, but it's just a different goal.
So in terms of advertising a new game that you haven't made anything but a very simple prototype, what would you be putting the ad spend towards? Would you be like a landing page or just a Steam page with wish lists that has mock-up graphics and trailers and
Mhm.
such?
Well, yeah, a landing page with email could be something else we could do. We could actually have the app and have it be a kind of a placeholder app that you
Mm.
install and you has a welcome message and explains, "Hey, this is a game that's in development. Um, thank you for whatever." We can work on different messages for that and kind of try to see if we can get the person's email. We could provide a small snippet. Maybe it's a demo, right? Maybe it's actually playable at some point. So there's going to be a progression, right? It's not a static thing. So in the beginning, maybe it's just maybe in the beginning we're sending players to Stone Story, right? So like we might have a campaign for some whatever game, and we're driving traffic to Stone Story page um, because why not, right? Like
Hmm.
that's ours. So we can start there and then and then make a landing page for the new. Because if you're still trying to find the visual style for the game, like, are you gonna keep making new landing pages as well? That's kinda
Right, right.
crazy. And
Yeah.
new trailers for each one? Maybe. Depends, right? Um, so yeah, it's a process that I've never done before. So I'm interested in trying it.
Gotcha.
Should be cool. Should
Well,
work.
we've touched on a lot here. We kind of went all over. Is there anything in particular, Stone Story or just game dev in general, that you want to share that didn't come up naturally?
Well, I'm a little stumped by that question. I think that, yeah, I would want to thank all the players, anyone who's on the call or watching this after. Yeah, thanks for playing and giving us feedback, participating in the community. The community's been really great, has been uh, super motivating and helpful in a lot of ways. And yeah, it wouldn't be the same without you guys who are watching.
That's
Thanks.
awesome. Yeah, I keep tabs in your Discord server a bit, and yeah, you definitely show that you care to engage with the community and such. I mean, I see you in there just like doing QAs and stuff from time to time. So that's yeah, you've got a good community thing going there. Good community thing
Yeah,
for
it's
going
growing
for
as
sure.
well. It's growing faster than I thought.
Well, I guess we can call it there, man. Thank you so much for your time. This has been
My pleasure.
really
It
insightful.
was
You're
nice
out of
meeting you.
all. Yeah, you're very methodical about your approach to pretty much everything that I've asked you about, which is interesting. I mean, kind of contrasts to me pretty heavily, kind of like how I was talking earlier, and a lot of people that I meet doing the sort of indie game
Hmm.
dev, Twitch streaming.
Hmm.
We can be very like emotional and attached to our games in some ways that can maybe inhibit. So I think that your perspective is a good one to consider. Yeah, thank you
Oh,
everyone for watching and listening. This one's recorded live on twitch.tv/EvanMMO. As always, of course. Yeah, thank you, Standard Combo. Good
yeah,
stuff, man.
thank you. Nice meeting
See
you.
you, everyone.